I'm pretty sure we are live. All right, everyone. Welcome to the Real Mental Health Break. I am your host. Very excited to host this event today. I'm Shawn Lesser. Just a little bit about me, a little bit background, and what am I doing in mental health. My background: born in Brooklyn, grew up in Long Island, went to Syracuse University. I did 15 years. I did international institutional equity sales in New York and Memphis, Tennessee. Then in 2007, with a partner of mine, we co-founded the first impact investing investment bank. Did a couple of different things, raised money for companies, raised money for funds, put on different investor convenings. And that's all great and did that for 16 years. But then I had my own mental health episode where I went into a dark place for a good amount of time. And now I've come out the other side and very excited to found the Real Mental Health Foundation with the goal to help other people, men, women, and families in their journey around mental health. And talking about journeys, I am very happy that we have Spirit as our guest now. I had a great conversation with Spirit the other day and really want to dive into mental health and diversity. She said, Shawn, are you ready for this? I said, yeah, I'm ready. Let's do it. So, Spirit, maybe you can give a little bit of an intro on your side.
Oh my gosh. How do I even like compare to all that
You can do it.
incredible stuff
You
that
can
you were
no, because
doing?
this is not a comparathon. This is just everyone's got their own thing.
No, I love that though. I love to say, I'm kind of boring in that I've just been in this same space for the last plus years. So by trade, I am a licensed professional counselor, a national board certified counselor, and doctor of psychology. I run a global impact firm that is based in Atlanta, Georgia, in the United States, because we never know where everybody is. And basically, what we do in this space is everything from the micro mental health that looks like everyday therapy. And we look at therapy from a preventative model as opposed to a respond to illness model. We truly believe that therapy is something that everybody should not only have access to, but that it should be your right and you are deserving of that. And you need that as part of your everyday functioning. It is something that is therapeutic and
Sure.
allows you to see not just yourself in a different way, but the entire world. And then from there, we bridge out into some of our larger macro programs at the state, at the national, and at the global level. And so we are all about ringing the alarm as it relates to what happens in mental health and wellness. And because we believe that everything begins and ends is either impacted by or impacting your mental health and wellness, that allows us to be everywhere because we teach people how to think about every system that we experience from the place of wellness and how to get back to or maintain wellness.
No, I love that. So I don't know how I'm going to keep up with you, but that's an awesome background, and it's also nice that we're both in Atlanta. We haven't met in human form yet, but we're planning on doing.
We got to do
We're going to
lunch.
have a
We have got to.
human form. So and we like to make this a conversation, Spirit. So I'll
Mhm.
ask you questions, you ask me questions. What we just roll with it. But since we're kind of
Yes, absolutely.
focused on diversity for today. I know you're knowledgeable in tons of topics. Maybe we just kind of look at
Mhm.
that area specifically. Just to kind of kick it off, like one question might be, how does this diversity affect mental health services? You're in the mental health service area, so how does that affect folks?
Yeah. Yeah. Well, I think the big part is even how do we define what diversity
Good
is,
question.
right? Because we know some of the things around diversity. And, if you ask anybody, what does diversity mean to you, especially in the workplace,
Mm-hmm.
what we hear are some of the legal
Sure.
pieces of diversity, right? So we talk about race, ethnicity, national origin, nation of origin, gender,
Mm-hmm.
religion, sexual orientation. But the things that we don't talk about when we think about diversity are the things that make us who we are and make us not only the same, but also different. And so some of the things that get left out of those conversations oftentimes are our religious
Mm-hmm.
beliefs, our physical abilities, since we are all uniquely abled. We often talk about it in terms of disability as opposed to people are uniquely abled and have different capabilities, as well as need different types of accommodations. Things like neurodivergence. We talk about socioeconomic status, the makeup of one's household and their community in terms of diversity or homogeneity, exposure to stress and what a person experiences. So, both acute, which is things that are happening right
Mm-hmm.
now, as well as chronic, things that a person has had to survive at earlier points in their life, or perhaps from their entire lifetime as a result of what they've experienced. So, when we talk about bringing those things in, all of those things then impact a person's mental health and wellness. And so, I love to say I was literally on another social media outlet
Mm-hmm.
yesterday,
Mm-hmm.
and I had to ask people, how often do you consider the mental health of the person that's sitting in front of you? Whether that is your partner, your child, your coworker, your boss, the person in the grocery store, the person at the bank, like how often do you take into account what they might be exposed to and what they are just trying to survive and how that is impacting their mental health and wellness? So when we think about that within practice or in our space, those are the kinds of ways that we are thinking about the people that come into our space, and we look at how all of those things factor into their overall functioning and
Mm-hmm.
wellness, and what we can do to help enhance that and make it better.
No, that's interesting how you frame that, right? So, for example, I had lunch with a friend yesterday, and we're talking about everyone here. You don't know what I'm like. Look at the restaurant, right? Everyone's having their conversations,
Hmm.
but I can
Yeah,
tell you that to a person, something's going on with each and every person that's here in some way,
absolutely.
right? And you don't know what that is. You
Absolutely.
can't see it from looking at their
Yeah.
face, right? But you know there's something going on. And we've had with the
Yeah.
real maybe 200 conversations, maybe more. And mental health is never 1 degree away. It's 0 degrees or half a degree away from everyone. When we have a conversation, no one's like,
Yes.
I don't know what you're talking about, right? No, they're like, oh, I never told anyone this, but etc.
Yeah.
Um, but
Yeah.
on that, I know it's hard to define, but maybe within what's going on in the world around, again, hard to define diversity, like where we had here in Atlanta, or kind of the George Floyd situation. Love to hear how that
Yeah.
affected people from different cultures, from different angles, and everyone's, people have a different perspective. And how do people look at those things?
Yeah. Well, I think it depends largely on who we were before we've had a particular experience.
Mm-hmm.
And I don't think that we even have to go back as far as the murder of George Floyd in
Mm-hmm.
order to just question how we are experiencing things. I mean, we can look at just where we are today. And I love to say that the world just feels like it's constantly on
Yes.
fire. So as we take a look at the climate of the Middle East and what is happening, and how we are grappling with what's happening there. And, what we know now more than ever, especially with technology, is that we are all interconnected. And so there may have been a time where what was happening on one side of the world, we may not have heard about it for days or weeks or even months. And we would say, oh, that poor group of people, as long as we weren't personally affected. But we live in a world now where we're all deeply affected by everything, and we are often experiencing things in real time.
Mm-hmm.
And so our humanity is constantly being taxed. We're constantly forced to grapple with the way that our systems are functioning, our own sense of power. What can I do or not do in a situation? And how relatable is that situation to me? And so I think just because as human beings, most of us are hardwired not just for connection, but to be interconnected, when we see the suffering of others, when we see things that feel unjust, when we see things that feel inequitable,
Mm-hmm.
we are constantly looking to have impact. What can I do in this
Mm-hmm.
situation? Where is my power in this situation? And oftentimes, what we don't realize is that we don't have to do big, major things, and we don't have to look
Mm-hmm.
far. Our impact doesn't necessarily have to be across the water. Sometimes it just has to be at an elbow's touch, and it's the person that's standing or sitting next to us to recognize, how are you being affected today?
Mm-hmm.
On top of everything else that was already happening to you.
Mm-hmm.
And oftentimes we don't recognize the way that our mental health is expressed in just our everyday functioning. So we don't know that the quality of our sleep, whether we're sleeping enough, whether we are waking up ahead of our alarm clock, whether we're having difficulty falling asleep,
Hmm.
whether we are sleeping really hard and getting that good REM sleep, whether we can't sleep and we're startled by the slightest sound, we don't recognize that to be signaling to us the quality of our mental health. We don't recognize the way that we eat,
Yeah.
our ability to control our thoughts, how we feel in our body, our level of irritability. We don't recognize that these things are communicating to us not just how we're doing, but how we're responding to what we're experiencing.
Hmm.
So you look at a situation like George Floyd, or you look at a situation and what's happening with the loss of life in Gaza. You look at all of these places and these
Hmm.
experiences, and you recognize that we are being deeply affected. While all the time, Shawn, we're still supposed to act like everything is business as
Right.
usual, and we are supposed to seem as though we are unaffected,
Right.
which puts even more stress on our bodies and taxes our mental health.
Do you think from social media and everything being so quick, all of a sudden we're just bombarded with all these? In the past, you might not be so close to these different things, but everything is 24-hour
Yeah.
news and you're getting it live up to the second, wherever it's happening in the world. And it's just might be a little bit of an overload for the system. Or how do you, how,
It's absolutely, yeah. I love that. That's the exact word, overload, because we're not expected, our body is not expected to constantly 24/7 be processing new information.
hmm.
And it's important that we know that anytime we're exposed to new information, our body has to do the work to assess whether or not what we're getting is a threat to our survival.
Hmm.
And so we are constantly now more than ever being inundated and flooded with information, and oftentimes we're getting it so quick that we don't even have the proper context. I know, even as we talked about, for example, the situation with the bombing of the hospital
Hmm.
yesterday. We heard in real time one thing, and then within a matter of minutes, we heard a totally different story.
Hmm.
And that took everybody from one emotional state to the next
Hmm.
based upon how they feel and where they sit in some of these issues. And so we are constantly processing information in real time while we're constantly taking in new information in real time, and it just overloads and bombards the system. It's hard. That's why we are walking around in a perpetual state of anxiety and in a perpetual state of exhaustion, because we don't know if we're in danger. We don't know what to do with everything that we're getting, plus what's about to come right behind it, plus
Yeah.
everything we've already had to survive. It's just constantly a lot, constantly a lot.
Well, I agree with you. So the next question is, it kind of that's the way things are and it's not going to change, that we're still going to have this
Yeah.
bombardment. So how do you handle that internally, or how do you talk to people that come in and speak to you when they're in that state?
Yeah, I think that the key, and I think it's a great question because I want to know the same thing from you. Like, how are you handling everything that you're experiencing? And I think for my clients, what it's really about is giving them the space to take a beat, which
Mm-hmm.
is, take a minute to actually connect to yourself, to hear the conversations that are happening, to feel the feelings that are bubbling underneath the surface, that typically, because you're so busy responding to your external environment, you can't even connect to what's happening internally.
Mm-hmm.
So, working with clients, usually, especially in therapy, which is why I love and I just recommend that everybody have the opportunity to go, because
Mm-hmm.
what you're talking about is that may be the only hour ever in your entire week, or bi-weekly or monthly, or whenever you choose to go, that may be the only hour that is 100% dedicated to you and your functioning in a way that lets you power down and turn inward when the entire world requires you constantly to be focused outward. Right?
No,
So, how are you dealing with all of that?
that's a good question. Well, I have to say I do have a very good therapist, so that I meet her once every Friday at 12.
Okay.
But
Okay.
yeah, there's a lot of information coming at everyone, right?
Hmm.
And sometimes you honestly get a little bit numb to it, right? You're like, I can't, I'm overloaded. On
Yeah.
my side, I'm Jewish, right? So I have ties to Israel, and it's just it's hard to watch all these things. It's just hard to
Yeah.
process it. And then talking with a lot of people that have roots over there or family, or it's hard to just process what's going on and how can you help? What can you do? You're sitting here, on the other side of the world, and then there's other things going on the planet. That's just it's overload, like we're talking about. So
Yeah.
uh, for me, I honestly, sometimes I'm just numb to it. I'm like, I don't know what to tell you, right? It's just like, okay,
Yeah.
I can't,
Yeah.
I can't, I'm processing too much information, right? I got my wife, I got my kids, I got my life, then I got these other things that are going on, and just like, okay, how do I keep on a steady path while all
Yeah.
these things are going on? It's tough for everybody.
Yeah, I love that you're making that connection too, because when you go numb, that is literally, it's an involuntary response. That's your body's way of trying to save you. It says,
Mm-hmm.
okay, we've taken in way too much information, so we have to just shut this down and disconnect from this in a way
Mm-hmm.
that just insulates us so that we can survive. And
Mm-hmm.
so I love to tell my clients all the time, you cannot put everybody in your boat. And
Right.
even if you have the space in your boat, it doesn't necessarily mean that you have the capacity, because buoyancy is important, right? So to
Mm-hmm.
put too many heavy things in your boat may sink you and cause you to drown. So we have to prioritize what we can take on, and that ebbs and flows based upon our own bandwidth. That ebbs and
Yeah.
flows based upon what our priorities are, what our motivation is, what our capability is, what our resources are. And so
Mm-hmm.
the hard part is recognizing, first and foremost, how do I take care of me? And then not how do I then pour. I think it was Lisa Nichols who recently said, I thought it was a very poignant way of saying, she said, in 2023, we're not pouring from our cups anymore. We're going
Mm-hmm.
to pour from our overflow. So
Right. Right.
first I have to fill my cup, and then I can give from my overflow, which means once my needs are met, now I have the capacity to give you the other things that won't be to my detriment. And I
Right.
think oftentimes we put ourselves on the back burner in ways that just deplete us so much that then we are trying to serve from an empty place. We are trying to give from an exhausted place. And I love to say, you cannot get rest if it is your soul that is tired. Sleep will not help with that. And so you have to figure out, how do I have my life set up? And is it set up in a way that really replenishes and restores and rehabilitates me each and every day? Because if not, everybody else is left to deal with the burden of your burnout,
So
especially in the workplace.
what are some things that you tell people to replenish? How do they, should some things that people can simple things that people can do?
Yeah, well, okay, so as it relates to the workplace, right? And I will go back to that, because most of us, unfortunately or fortunately, we have to earn a living. We have to be able to take care of ourselves. And we're spending so much time in the workplace. So I talk about that environment first and foremost. And I have to always remind people that people don't leave jobs, they leave people.
Mm-hmm.
They leave environments. And so you have to take a look at the environments that you are in. What does
Mm-hmm.
your work environment look like? What does your home environment look like? What does the community that you interface with look like? And
Mm-hmm.
how is that pouring into you? And then before you can recognize the quality of the pour, you also have to be aware, what do you need in order to be replenished? What do you
Mm-hmm.
need in order to function optimally? And most of us don't even know what it is that we need. We just have learned to accept whatever we can get. And so, I think work smart, not hard. And so, smart is, how well do you know yourself? If you
Mm-hmm.
haven't done the work to really understand yourself, what you need, what you think, what you feel, what makes you go, what motivates you, what keeps you in your passion place, how do you take the time to really explore those things? How do you take the time for play? How do you take the time for rest? These things are not rewards, these are
Mm-hmm.
biological imperatives. And so I invite people to have a new relationship with themselves. And then how do you inspire or model or motivate that for people around you? So whether that's in your home or in the workplace or with your friends, your families, your frenemies, the enemies, because
Hmm.
everybody needs a little something from you. How can you show them what it means to be living your very best life, to give them permission to do the same?
So, what would be some things? I know you're saying you show them, but in what ways? Like, what
Mhm.
specific kind of things might you do in that
First and
relationship?
foremost, I always love to talk about how we're eating, how
Hmm.
we're sleeping, and how we are loving. And what I
Hmm.
mean by that is what you put into your body, food really is either medicine or poison. And
Hmm.
most of us are not eating well. We don't understand why nutrients affect us the way that we do. The other part of that is we also have to think about how we're sleeping, because rest is where that restoration and repair happens, even at the cellular level. So those things are important. And then how are we loving? First, how are we loving ourselves? Are we doing all the things? Are we making sure that our appointments for our medical visits are where they need to be? So we know that we are operating optimally. Are we loving the people around us? Are we receiving love? Are we satisfied in the relationships that we're in? Are we taking time to do things like proper exercise? Because
Hmm.
exercise is so important. And I love to tell folks, if you feel like I'm just absolutely overwhelmed, it's too much, everything is too much constantly, what are you doing in order to release and to relieve yourself? And are you a person that needs time apart in order to do that? Or are you a person that needs to be plugged in order to do that? So
Hmm.
that looks like listening to your favorite music, taking time to write, taking time to read, taking time to do projects simply for pleasure, not because they are based in productivity or something you can monetize. Are you spending time with people? Are you laughing? Are you living in ways that allow you to feel hope? Not just for what you're engaged in the right now, but what is to come for tomorrow.
Hmm. Hmm. No, that's interesting. And I'm just kind of a comment on my life. And when I was in a dark place, right, you sometimes
Mhm.
feel like you're the only one that's feeling this way, right? You're the
Yeah.
only ever. And it's the funny thing is, it's actually the opposite, that most people are
Mhm.
feeling something like that at sometimes
Yeah.
in their life. But you just feel like, especially, guys and women and guys are a little bit different. Guys meet more shoulder to shoulder, women meet face to face, and guys especially like to keep these things in and be a lone warrior or a lone wolf, and then that stuff
Mm.
bubbles up and kind of blows up.
Oh,
So
absolutely,
yes,
absolutely, because you guys are socialized that way. You
yes,
haven't had permission to really get into your feelings and stay there.
yes,
Oftentimes, people will even say things like, "Get out of your feelings, stop being so
sure,
emotional,"
sure.
And really, it's like, no, you need to live in your feelings, because your feelings are telling you what you need in order to be able to survive. So I
Hmm.
think it's just a really unique way of looking at things. But I also think, to your point, Shawn, that's why we have to collectively get more comfortable with healing out loud.
Hmm.
Because if more
Oh, that's
people
cool.
recognize, yeah, we got to heal out loud. We have to
Hmm.
talk about, the way that our trauma is impacting us. We have to talk
Hmm.
about the way that our stress is killing us. We have to talk about, I've been in such dark places that I thought
Hmm.
about taking my life and I was able to have new thoughts and come back from that. We have to talk about our husbands are stressing us out, our children are
Yeah.
stressing us out. We have to talk about the loss. We have to talk about the grief. We have to
Hmm.
talk about the anger. We have to talk about our frustration and resentment, our confusion, our lack of information, our misinformation. And if we would just spend more time being able to talk, I love to say our thoughts and feelings are gifts that we give to other people. If we would just be willing to give ourselves, but also to be in places and spaces where we can be received in a particular kind of way, we would be so much better. But we're
Hmm.
often, as you said, that shoulder to shoulder, not even
Sure.
realizing who the person is that's standing next to us and the value just a single conversation could bring to both of our lives, because we all have
Mhm.
something to give each other.
Sure. And you don't even realize if you check on someone, text them, you don't know what they're going through. You could be helping them out tremendously, even though you're like, oh,
Yeah.
that was nothing.
And it for them may be the only person that reaches out to them that
Hmm.
day or that
Hmm.
week. Sometimes in therapy, because I love hugging my clients. It's one of the things that I live for, just to have that physical exchange. And I have had people who will tell me, this is the only hug I've gotten all week long.
Hmm.
And you never know what the power of that is. We didn't even recognize how powerful that was until we were in COVID doing telehealth sessions. And
Yeah.
the one thing that my clients would say more than ever is, man, I just really miss those hugs. Gosh, Spirit, I just really need a hug right now. I just really need to know that somebody loves me and cares about me and doesn't want anything from me in this moment. And
Well,
so we are all hardwired for that.
you're also an excellent hugger. So you know.
I love hugs. I have perfected the art of hugging. Okay. If you ever meet me for that'll be the thing. It's like bring it in. Let's get that love because that connecting all of those chakras, I'm about it. I am all
Sure.
about it.
Sure.
Mhm.
And that was a big thing for me, and also kind of like what trying to do with the real. Like for example, we're
Mhm.
doing these walks. Like we did one walk last week. We're doing our second real walk, and it's not complicated. It's a really crazy
Yeah.
concept. It's people coming together and going for a walk. It's not. It's not.
Listen,
It's not rocket science.
it sounds so uncomplicated, but in this day and age, like trying to plug into
Oh
like,
yeah.
how do I disconnect to fit in a walk?
Yeah.
I
Yeah.
don't walk at all. And you would be amazed at what something just as simple as a walk can do, even just for the
Sure.
physical body, all the endorphins, all the feel good stuff, all the fresh air, and then the
Yes.
conversation that goes along with it.
Yes.
Walks can be powerful in that
Yes.
place and space. So kudos for doing it.
Yeah, it's a simple thing, and we want to do that across the country, across the world. It's not complicated, but yeah, people are busy and people are running around, and you know, how do you fit everything in? It's just like everyone's so busy. I'm not sure what they're doing or if they know what they're doing, but they're very busy.
We're all spinning. We are in a
Yeah,
society that says productivity above all things constantly.
I
And the
like that.
moment that you slow down or stop, then somehow you're falling behind. But
Right.
again, rest is the biological
Yeah.
imperative. We
Yeah.
can't keep going. Eventually, we will break or become debilitated if we keep up at that pace.
Yeah. A friend of mine said to me, he said, Sean, go slow so you can go fast because you're just
Hello. Hello. And sometimes rest so you can go farther faster.
yes, yes,
Yeah. Yeah. Yeah.
exactly, exactly.
I
So
love that.
yeah, that's not my line.
Yeah.
My friend Richard's line, but he told me I was like, he's like, Sean, you're going too fast. I'm like, all right, you're right. I am going too fast because then things are
Yeah.
just fly by and don't appreciate them and just like in a blur kind of thing. But
Yeah, like
I
somebody
think
has
we're
their finger on the fast forward button.
yeah, and you're like, I gotta get this done.
Mhm.
I gotta go here. You know, I gotta take my kid here. I gotta do that. Just like, well, what?
Yeah.
You gotta stop for a second, and be like, what the hell am I
Yes.
doing? Where am I going so
Yes.
fast? Why are
Yes.
you in such a
For
rush?
what? Right, to
Yes,
what end? We're like,
yes,
"I've gotta get it all in," and the
yes,
purpose is to what end?
yes.
And it if you know that it all works out in the end anyway,
Yeah,
then thinking about maybe taking out 1 or 2 extra things may actually improve the way that you do everything else. So it's
I
like,
like
how
that.
can I just reprioritize sometimes and trim the fat so that I'm just left with the substantive stuff because that's what's most important, but I don't have to do it all at the same time and I don't have to do it all the time,
Yeah,
right? We got
yeah.
to slow down. We got to
Another
slow down.
thing I'm going to bring up, and we're going to end a little bit, but you know, sometimes just me personally, and I understand that sometimes when I slow down and like it's a quiet time, that's sometimes
Mhm.
the hardest time because my
Oh,
mind
yes.
is not used to. It's used to being on the treadmill, and once you stop the
Uh-huh.
treadmill, it's like, dude, what are you doing? You're not
Uh-huh.
moving, right? And my mind's just
Uh-huh.
like, no, you got to do something. So
Yeah,
yeah,
it activates the anxiety. We're
yes.
worried because wait a minute, what's happening? Are
What
we
am I
dying?
doing?
We're used to moving at this pace. And then the other part of that is that when we're not consuming new information, then the brain switches what it's doing and it goes from trying to take in information and process, are we safe, to now let's go ahead and download everything that we've experienced, give it meaning so that we can properly file it away. And
Hmm.
most of us do not want to have to deal with all of the things that we have experienced and taken in. So
Hmm.
sitting with yourself and that slowness and that stillness becomes very uncomfortable for people, especially if they're used to chaos and the wheels
Yes,
going. You know, when you're used to chaos, peace feels deadly.
yes.
You know,
I know the
peace
feeling.
feels toxic. Yeah,
Yes,
it's a really
yes.
interesting thing.
The machine's just going. So, but on the machine, we're about to end the show here. Spirit,
Oh,
where can
wow.
people
Okay.
find
Okay.
you? I know we were just chatting away. where can people find you? Where can they work with you? Where, what do
Yeah,
they
well,
do?
we're working on some amazing global projects, which by the way, let me just say this because we are getting into Giving Tuesday in next month, right? We're just kind of raring to go. But they can find me at Talk to Spirit, and it's Talk the number 2 Spirit on all of my social media handles. We are doing some incredible work in this space. So as people are thinking about whether or not they need to get into some therapy, they have loved ones or those folks that they would like to love, or unfortunately, they're just hard to love, but they have to be in their space. If you want to talk about therapy in those places and spaces, you need referrals. We do a live mental health chat every Friday. You said Friday
I
while you're
watched it.
seeing your therapist. So while you're being taken care of, I can take care of everybody else. We do a live mental health chat on my Facebook page. It's called Free Advice Friday. We've been doing that for the last 7 years. And then we are just working really hard to make sure that everybody gets access to mental health services in the community. So if they want to donate or give to our pro bono or sliding fee scale service programs so that the community can be taken care of, we are here for those partnerships as well. So it's all about collaboration, partnership and collaboration. If you want to partner or collaborate or be taken care of as it relates to mental health and wellness, come and talk to Spirit.
Come and talk to Spirit. I like that. And I
Yes, talk
watched.
to Spirit.
I told you I was watching one of your the Friday breaks or whatever it was. I really enjoyed
Yeah.
it. And I was when we first met. That's where I first went. I was like, Spirit, I'm watching you. This is great. So
Oh, that's how, okay.
yeah,
I love that. I
yeah, I was
love that.
watching it.
We've
I
been
was
doing
like,
it for 7 years,
yeah,
seven
it's
years
very
now.
cool. So I recommend
Thank you.
people also listen to it. So I think I'm trying to think of the big takeaways. One was to go fast, go slow, or go. What would be like one or two other takeaways you'd like to give the folks before we go?
Yeah, I think it would be that know that everything is impacting or impacted by your mental health, right?
Mm-hmm.
Know that we all have mental health, but we don't all have mental wellness.
Mm-hmm.
And if you have not given yourself the gift of therapy in the last, let's just say 3 months, with the world on fire,
Yep.
what are you doing? So, everybody, and I mean everybody, deserves an incredible therapist on their team.
Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm.
Everybody.
Great, great. And
Mhm.
if you're lucky to get Spirit, you're very lucky. So I'm going to say goodbye to everyone. Thank you for watching the show. We do it every week. And if you want to find out some more information on the Real, just go to thereal.care. And I wish everyone a great Wednesday and a great rest of the week. Thanks, Spirit. See you all.
Yay. My pleasure. My pleasure.
Bye
Have a
bye.
great week, everybody.